What's up, friends? Welcome back to the Squanch. This is Wisecrack's Rick and Morty podcast. I'm Michael Burns, joined as always by some Squanchers. We have two just extremely special returning guests today. We have Billy Domineau and we have Reilly Anspaugh. They've both been on recent episodes. They're back again. That means that they don't hate us because they came back.
Or we just still are trying to form an opinion.
Okay, that's good.
Need time to metabolize.
Well, Billy did have to come back because I abandoned him the first time he came on. I was in the throes of the illness. I was so excited. I had notes ready for an intro I was going to do for him that was good. It was going to make him feel really good about himself. He was going to think like, wow, I feel comfortable and loved. But then I don't, it's too late now. But I will say, Billy, the reason I wanted to have you on initially, not just because I like talking to you about stuff, but because I was reflecting on how the first TV writing class I took with you, I think the first thing we went over was the Rick and Morty pilot.
I use that as an example of how to write a non-premise pilot, how to get right to it. So, yeah. Have you learned anything?
No. I still work here. So, the pilots aren't doing well. I'm kidding. I love being here. And then Reilly, of course, hung out with a couple weeks ago, hosted review, play upcoming in Chicago. We're all excited about it. Is it still happening?
Oh,
is it not happening?
Not anymore, my friend.
Okay.
No, it is not. It is capital P postponed because of sweet Miss Delta. But we are doing a lot because it started as an online experience. So that will be happening on September 24th. We're coming back for a one night only online into the mist.net.
Yes.
If
I'm
you're
very
nasty,
sorry to hear that. Nothing's happening anymore, everyone. So tuck in. All we get to do is podcast where we see people on screens forever now. But we're here together, gathered to talk about Rick and Morty season 5, episode 8, Rickternal Friendshine of the Spotless Mort. Once again, that is the Rickternal Friendshine of the Spotless Mort. So,
and we're going to talk about White Lotus.
We are, but I'm a little behind, so we're not going to spoil White Lotus.
Predictions for episode 6. What are we feeling? Let's just
what
get
a good
right
show.
to
Oh
it.
yeah, starting next time, this is going to be a White Lotus podcast. So enjoy the last discussion of Rick and Morty and get into that. Maybe we'll have some White Lotus time at the end. Let's get started with this. Give me your initial reaction to this episode and your letter grade. So, put on your teacher's hat and get into it. Reilly, let's start with you. Initial reaction, letter grade.
Oh, dear God. Okay, so famously, I am the Rick and Morty expert historian. I've seen every episode, and by that I mean I've seen season 1, episodes 1 and 2, and season 5.
I did think about that with this episode for you because it does get into some stuff. So we'll have fun talking about it. Yeah.
So the first and the only other time I was on, it was an ep that it's like I could get by without having seen any other frames of this show before. But this one, we were 2 minutes and I was at my computer and I audibly was like, God damn it. But I loved it. I mean, like, and this is as someone who was sitting there Googling bird person Morty, I felt the egg was on my face, but I had a really good time. I mean, it was like, for someone, me, who like doesn't know any of that history at all, any of that canon, anything, like it was still a really fun episode to watch, and it made me curious. And then of course I'm sitting there being like, now what's all the Star Wars stuff going on? What the hell? Like, but I had a ball, and just the themes alone about like memory and subjectivity and like what we remember and how we remember it, I thought were really interesting, and I'm excited to get into that. And there were a couple one-liners that really got me, but I think with no context of like how it serves the stories that led up to this, it's hard for me to give a letter grade. But on its own, not knowing anything else, I would say like, because of that, I would say like B+.
Yeah,
that's
fair.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Billy, same question to you. Initial reaction and letter grade.
I am very lucky that I got to be on a few weeks ago, so I learned that time, okay, you have to come prepared with this academic analysis and be ready to put down a letter grade. So I was in that mindset, which led me to these thoughts, which are, one, the episode took a really big swing in the let's explore Rick's psyche direction, which is a huge improvement over so many of the episodes this season, such as Incest Baby. Gundam was okay. Certainly Turkey's not my favorite in terms of actually exploring characters, wants, needs, emotions. That said, I think they leaned a lot on just a heavily overly dramatic, to the point of melodramatic tone in this episode. They wanted you to know from the get-go this is a relatively serious episode, or not even a serious, but a weighty episode of Rick and Morty. And they did a lot of telling in that, as opposed to actually grounding us in why Rick needs to do this. So I'm going to give it the particularly academic grade of an incomplete. I want this.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is the first time, everyone. This is the first time it's ever happened on this podcast. This is great.
We are at the end of the Rick and Morty semester, so to speak, and I want to say to this student, take them aside, like, you're on to something big here, but you kind of got to it too late. I know we're all scared for the sake of grad school to have an eye on our transcripts, but I really want you to keep working on this next semester and actually let it become a Rick and Morty episode rather than a borderline other show that is going through using a lot of Rick and Morty style to tell its story about friendship and loss, and exactly as Reilly said, touch on all the aspects of memory and perception.
Wow. An incomplete. I got to reframe what's possible now, because the frame of possibility has been expanded. I hate the thing too, because Billy, you did the thing where now I'm like, damn, I kind of like some of those points, but I'm not going to rethink on the spot. I'm going to say what I thought leading into this. I liked the episode a lot. I liked it because it did explore, I love the exploration of memory. I like any time we dive into Rick's psyche a little bit and get to experience, what makes daddy drink type stuff. Why is Rick the way he is? And I think the show's at its best when it balances exploring ideas with actual character development and with letting us see some type of change, even if it's momentary, in the characters. And my two favorite types of Rick and Morty episodes are the real thinky ones, or the real kind of dark emotional ones. I think we've not had a lot of that this season. So I was just so refreshed to see them go that direction. As anyone listening to the last episode knows, I was not a big fan of the last episode of the show. So I liked it because of that. And I really like the visual representation of memory. We may talk more about that later, but I just love how they framed that with one memory connecting to another. I thought that was a really cool way to set that up. And I thought they dropped some fun little Easter eggy things throughout that we maybe talk about as well. I'm going to go the worst grade possible, which is B++. I did this one semester when I was teaching, and I don't know what the fuck I was thinking, but I would give B++, which was just an 89 or something, which I thought I was saying to a student, you're doing so good, you're almost there. But I realized what I was saying to them is fuck you, nothing's good enough. And it's horrible.
I was gonna say, Michael, I would go home and sob. Yeah. I would absolutely
So
cry
I apologize
over B++.
to any student who is in my, what semester is that? I'm not gonna say too much, but if you, for any reason, we're in one of those classes, you're listening to this now to learn information about where I am to kill me, that was my bad. But at least know what I did in final grades, though. I will say this: B++, I rounded up if their grade was on the bubble. So the individual paper would be a B++, but for final grades, if I saw that and you were on the bubble, I would jump you up to an A.
It's the least you can do.
I'm really glad to hear that you rounded up to, the 90 to the A- here, because implicit in this idea of I'm going to grade a B++ is a fight against grade inflation. And okay, I don't want to just say this is an A-. And in doing so, you're creating a whole new, even more insane level of grade inflation. You're slicing a bounded infinity, and it gets very complicated very fast.
I had some students that cried and got very upset once. This will be a quick digression. We'll get right back to it. I promise, friends. Where I was giving kind of tough grades and doing assignments where I just did completes and incompletes. But in my mind, though, I'm I'm just going to give them all A's. But I can't say that right? You can't say that, but I'm gonna give them all A's. And then a few of them like broke down mid-semester and were just like, I need to know where I stand. These grades are bad. And I was like, shit. But then I just said, then I cracked and was like, oh, I was going to give everyone an A. I didn't want you to know that. And then some of those people took advantage of it. But grading's stupid. I don't like it. My last semester.
Like, Mr. Burns is going to give us an A anyway.
Listen, the best was when I knew I was done teaching that last semester. Just like, you got an A if you did anything short of like writing an essay on like why my parents shouldn't have had me. Up until that point, you were in. Okay, so before we dive into talking about this episode, like, let's do a quick episode recap. I'll try to rush through it. But here's what happens in the episode. The Smiths heading out on a cruise vacation without Rick. He has things to do, namely trying to fully reanimate his old best buddy, Bird Person, with the help of his garage-based artificial intelligence system. But he hits a snag in the reanimation process. Bird Person has a missing object in his mind, namely his mind. As the garage says, subject mind relocated within subject mind by subject mind. So Rick hooks himself up to Bird Person with some tubes and goes exploring inside of his unconscious to try to find the remnants of his self. Also, the garage offers to do oral to Rick. Once inside, things go all eternal sunshine. We explore Bird Person's memories, and along the way, Rick ends up joining up with a younger version of himself. This younger Rick at one point calls Rick one of those creeps that lives with abandoned adult Beths, and then drops the gem, you live with a version of our dead daughter. So a lot to unpack there. We also learn that Bird Person actually has a baby with Tammy. Now, eventually, they find his mind, which he's trying to blow up from the inside out. With his mind slowly breaking down, they head to their Vietnam, the Battle of Blood Ridge, and we get to see young Rick and Bird Person kicking ass together, but our Rick warns Memory Rick that things will end poorly. They do, but not in terms of the battle. As they defeat the Federation, Rick asks Bird Person to come join him on adventures across the multiverse, and we hear Rick acknowledge that while nothing in the multiverse matters, that Bird Person matters to him. But doesn't work. Bird Person doesn't want to go. As they finally fight their way out of Bird Person's collapsing consciousness, Memory Rick sacrifices his life to take out the violent Tammy Memory. This gives Bird Person and Rick a chance to escape, and they make it out of the world of the unconscious and back into their physical bodies. Rick wants to go get drunk, but Bird Person goes on a mission to find his child. Now, Memory Rick, it turns out, snuck from Bird Person's subconscious into Rick's to stay alive, and chooses to stay a memory rather than become a real person and drink a beer with Rick. After the credits, we see Bird Person's daughter in Federation Prison, where she's murdering a fellow inmate with a spoon, I think. That's the episode. So I don't know. Let's get into it. Does anyone have any place they want to start? I'll open it to the class.
I can go. So, with regards to my incomplete grade,
yes, which is worse than a B++, just to be clear. If you're a student,
exactly.
Yeah.
We are in a teacher's lounge. I just want to say this is like we're between classes, and this is like we're getting into
This is why we should all write for AP Bio. We're all staffable. Hire us. But so if we want to talk about what is Rick's want in this episode, well, obviously his goal is to resurrect Bird Person. Why does he want to resurrect Bird Person, though? If we're just taking what's on the page here, what's actually made into the episode, when it comes down to it, pretty much all they concretely give us is Rick wants someone to drink with. And it's not really developed more than that. Of course, we are getting the broad strokes of this is a man who is alone. This is someone who has lost every other real friend in his life. Sure, but we actually don't dive into Rick's emotions on how that messes him up inside. And it's, again, just this very borderline transactional thing of, hey, do you just want to hang out right now? And because we go through something much, much more with Bird Person, where he decides he wants to live for the sake of a child that might be out there and probably needs his help. But Bird Person isn't our protagonist, it's Rick. And so because we just have such an unsubstantial want there, that's where really the core of the episode currently failing is for me.
Wow. Is there a world, I'll be a little devil's advocate here, where Rick wanting a drinking buddy is not Rick literally wanting a drinking buddy, but Rick wanting true connection and friendship and being unable to articulate that. So he goes through these cycles where He knows what he wants. It's almost like we know what he wants, but he doesn't know what he wants at that level.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what makes the ending feel so sad. So, I mean, I agree with you. I had that thought of just like, once he tries to reanimate or animate Memory Rick to drink with him, it's sort of like, okay, was this just all about you wanting someone to have a whiskey with? But I do think there's something there in terms of getting at Rick's unhappiness and emptiness. And I think our journey through memory does show us some things that flesh that out. However, it makes us put that together. I think we have to do that work on our own.
Yeah.
100%. And like, that is absolutely what the show is aiming at. I just think it needs to be a little bit more on the page. Not that we can't understand it and make those connections, but just purely for the sake of the medium, I think that function, if this was a chapter of a long novel that is Rick and Morty, I think this would stand up much, much better for me. But just as a TV show, that not only do you want it for the most part to be able to stand alone, so that this is not required, that it's not necessarily a required reading that we know who Bird Person was previously and saw all those other episodes. But just so that we can get the comedy out of this that we're looking for, as opposed to setting up on this more dour. And again, not that this show can't and it doesn't do dour and serious very, very well, but it's never when it's at its best. It's never at the expense of the comedy, whereas this is really getting us into that darker place earlier, which is just frankly not as successful for me. It's not even that it's not as much fun. It's just a little bit underdeveloped.
This may be a little bit of a B++ response. But what I mean, like, almost to marry those two things together, what was successful for me is like, is it almost kind of, I don't know, the journey through the psyche and the memory, it was like bookended by the drinking, but the deeper you went, it's like you saw it more, you saw the care more, you saw the want for that friend more. So it's like those things came out, and then as soon as you snap back to the present out of like the depths, the deeper you go, it was almost just, it's like more layman's terms, it was like surface, deeper want, surface. And so it's like for us to see that that's there, and whether he's able to verbalize it in like, present day Rick or not, but like he knows that that's somewhere in there, but he might not be able to say it. Yeah, and then the garage wanted to suck someone's dick. So, at the end of the day, it's like you can have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
That's
what
Elon
got the extra plus was the
Bezos.
garage dick sucking.
Yeah.
The garage telling the neighbor that Jesus really made me laugh.
It's
That's
very
true.
rare that someone saying some version of, let's cut to the chase, I'll suck your dick, doesn't work.
Yeah. But it is, I mean, it's odd that like the funniest lines of the episode are just two lines from a sentient garage. And I do think like, and I think we, everyone brought this up this far. It wasn't the funniest episode. I think for me, it felt like an overcorrect, where there's been episodes this season that had like funny moments, funny dialogue. I laughed while watching them, but left feeling a little bit like, okay, so what? You threw a bunch of stuff at the wall. Whereas I think because this one at least tried to do something, I forgave the lack of comedy, and I also just kept thinking about the robot wanting to suck the dick.
The other line that did make me laugh is like when that fuck guy, when they were like, like harassing these bird people, and he's just like, I'm sorry, I'm just doing my job and loving it. That really got me too. That and the sentient garage, those were the two big comedy points for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree on this was an overcorrect. And did either of you watch like the after the episode, in the writers talk, like they do on HBO thing that they've added at the end? So they, have this 1 minute clip of Dan Harmon, some of the other producers and writers talking about the creation of this episode. And you very quickly hear some of them saying stuff that is essentially like, we really felt we owed this episode to Bird Person because we left at the end of season 4 with him, as a broken mess, and we need to get back to it. And I love that intention that like, let's not leave that just over in the corner of the room, But I think, exactly as you're saying, Michael, it led to this, okay, let's put our serious hats on for a second. And, that took away some of the fun that they could normally have in an episode like this. I mean, the most straightforward comparison to it is Pickle Rick, in terms of let me go through the steps of a quite literally underground to above ground journey in order to get to, a greater understanding of myself. But that is making sure, first and foremost, it's based in immediate need and also just the fun of that premise.
Yeah, and the show itself, I think, doesn't Rick say as they're leaving, like, when you guys leave, I'm more likely to get into a Pickle Rick situation or something like that?
Exactly.
So, yeah, they've been really heavy-handed with these little meta things. So question for both of you. One of the things I did like on kind of the thinkier side of things, I liked the exploration of memory. I already said I thought the way they visualized that was really cool. Mm-hmm. But I think in general, like, just that idea, as they point out multiple times, that characters are limited by Bird Person's recollection of that. And that's fun, but I think it also speaks to the way in which, like, we know as humans that our memories are often shaped in the same way, where we have memories from our childhoods that are likely so far removed from reality because we've remembered them in all of our recollections and stuff. So I don't know. I thought that was a fun attempt to explore memory. I liked it because it didn't try to say too much. I don't think it was like an overshoot in trying to make some deep point about things, but still gestured to an interesting way of thinking about memory. Wondering what y'all thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is also like tying into what you're saying about the visuals, is that it's like it felt very dreamy, and the way that it's like when you have a dream, it's like, oh well, like I'm going into that room, and it wasn't really a room, but it was that, and like that's the way a lot of older memories feel. If it's like, well, you were there, but it wasn't you, but it was you. At least that's how I remember it, and that mixed with the limitations of like, even younger Rick, like shooting a portal, but then they weren't able to walk through it. It's like, well, he knew I could do this, but he didn't know what it was. Or even Tammy, trying to remember the name, and she just said like, blah, 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 which also felt very dreamy. Was really like, and again, also not knowing the history at all, which is shocking because I know I'm the expert and that's why you brought me here. So like, I'm sorry to let you down. But it was very, like, from what I could tell of Bird Person having a tough history with Tammy and her being, evil or changing sides, whatever, that like the way, like at the core, like how do you remember someone, like aside from what they do, but like how do you, I don't know, I guess there's a difference of like, how do you remember them and then how do you want to remember them and can they coexist? And so it's like, yes, you can have all these memories of what they did, and he does. Like you see her, you see the memories of her, I guess, like, turning or whatever those moments were. But then you have the core of like, but this is how I want to keep her here. This is like what felt good. And this is like, if I'm living in here, this is what I want to be experiencing. And so then it's like, I don't know, is that a detriment to the present? Like, how does that affect how you think about people in the present with your memory? Like that brought up a lot of questions for me, but I thought that was very moving, of Rick being like, what the hell, she sucked. And he's like, yeah, but this is what I want. This is how I want to be in here.
Yeah. That was very real when he like wanted to remember Tammy, who ruined his life, and turned him into a cyborg, but wanted to hold on to that there's something very real there.
Mm-hmm.
I was just talking with my therapist also over Skype 30 minutes before this, so let's just throw HIPAA out the window and get to the heart of that. And
is that what HIPAA is? Finally,
that's what HIPAA, in the words of Dr. Spachemin, HIPAA is whatever we want it to be. But I was talking today about what's tough when you have a very cut and dry or cold or realistic view of the world is that you can cut yourself off from a lot of the magical thinking that is very necessary to get through day-to-day life. And Rick is someone who is fully cut himself off from any form of magical thinking, whether it be for his own delusions, he might have some level of delusion about himself, and we see that a lot in the toxic personality episode, but for the most part he has that under control and knows his limitations, and he is someone who is left with, as he says, Bird Person after the Battle of Blood Ridge, nothing matters, and everything is real and nothing is real. Whereas Bird Person is able to engage in this magical thinking of remembering a slice of Tammy, turning that slice into his whole memory of her, because that is going to be psychologically better for him. And I think that's a really important distinction to be able to make and say it's not necessarily good or bad or right or wrong, but it's certainly, helpful, and until it becomes a hindrance and you get trapped in that memory. Michael, you said that the episode makes a lot of gestures towards dreamlike states and states of memory and the physicality of it. And I think gesture is exactly the right word, again, in terms of my incompleteness thinking here. One of the moments that really stood out to me, there just at the start of the Battle of Blood Ridge, Rick is searching for whether it's weapons or Bird Person, I'm not sure exactly, and he opens up one of and they are warthogs, they steal the design from Halo, but he opens up one of the warthog ATVs, and he sees some version of Bird Person eating the body of another version of Bird Person, and that to me was just very like, oh, you guys are playing the general idea of a subconscious here, and that might mean something, but really, like, this is just, you're illustrating the concept of, okay, we are in someone's memory, but not really getting into the nitty-gritty specifics of it. And then Riley, you said something which I've now lost in my brain, but I was going to agree with it very hard. But
we'll do a whole episode in there. We'll all get on in there and find it.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll come back next week. People want to hear about this episode again. But whatever you said, it was correct.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. No, I like that. I didn't really think about that idea that, like, inside those things, they're sort of representing, like, the deeper aspects of the unconscious in that. And I do like that you broke HIPAA to bring up your therapy session, because it did make me think about, I was talking to a friend recently about therapy and how the third session is where they get you, because you go in and you're like, I just want to talk about, like, work. I just feel so overworked and I just get anxious, or maybe you're like, my relationship's a little weird. And then third session, you casually are like, it's like this one time I was 7 and, like, my dad said he was going to come home to watch a show with me, and he didn't. And then all of a sudden the therapist is like, let's get into it, because that's the point at which we're going to chip away and realize that some of the memories you have might either open access to things happening now and or make you realize that some of the things you've told yourself are, whether magical thinking or self-delusions to make yourself feel good about stuff. And I feel like we see a lot of that going on here. Now, one of the things that is said and comes up, and very immediately, one of our patrons at Wisecrack, John H., immediately had a theory on this one. But there's the line where young memory Rick says to our Rick, I said this line before, but you're one of the creeps that lives with abandoned adult Beths. You live with a version of our dead daughter. And I had to, like, pause and rewind when he says a version of our dead daughter. Very much caught me off guard, because, like, Beth is alive. Why would you say that? There's 2 of her, in fact. So it seems to indicate that a lot of the other Ricks didn't abandon their family, and because of that, their family died, and that our Rick is one of the ones who abandoned his daughter so that she would live. If that's the way we're reading it, that's extremely sad. The idea that you would have to abandon the one that you love to save them or whatnot. Curious if y'all have thoughts on that. Is that how we're reading it? Is this just one of those dumb things where sometimes in an episode they'll, like, gesture to Rick's dead wife in a way where I think is to mock us for desiring that level of backstory? So I'm wondering, like, is this an instance where they're teasing us to point out that we're dumb for wanting to know these cartoon characters more? Is it getting at something that's trying to give a level of depth and sadness to the character? I don't know. What did you guys think about those lines?
I took it as, first of all, I also had to, like, pause, or I didn't even pause in the moment. I just hit me so hard. I'm just like, oh, I forgot about the episode where they revealed that, and that already became canon, and this shouldn't be something that is completely game changing. And then I had to go online and Google. It's like, nope, this was the moment of the episode that everyone's talking about. I took it as completely sincere because, and I love when this show wants to play around with what is canon and what is not, and also what we as viewers of and consumers of any television or other media, all the little leaps in logic we make, and Mr. Poopy Butthole being the ultimate extent of that in terms of, is a character pre-existing or not. But this episode is entirely, as far as I can read it, sincere throughout. And so I think this is something that they are planting of, okay, we are going to eventually explore this.
I mean, like, again, I can, I'm not going to repeat the same intro about my viewing experience with this, but that was a moment that, like, I stopped too. And I'm like, I had the same thing of like, should I have known about this? But then it's interesting that it's a talking point and not something that was just like a throwaway thing of like, oh yeah, everyone knows. So it made me, I don't know, it made me really curious to see like what is gonna happen with that moving forward, or if it's just something they're dropping like for people to think about and look back about, or if it's something that's going to be explored more. It just made me really curious, and I agree. I felt, I mean, again, not like knowing the culture around that specifically, but it felt, I think you're spot on, Billy, in like kind of, if we're seeing it through the light of the tone of the rest of the episode, it felt very sincere and something that, I'd be totally interested in exploring that. I'm really like, I think like as I've been introduced to the show over the past couple weeks, which is so wild, I'm really impressed with how brave and like daring they are to take things to those levels. Even if it's like, if it's incomplete sometimes or whatever, or it's like kind of gesturing, which I think it's like, there's a totally fair. I think it's like, it's still very, at least to me, it's still very compelling and something that I feel like I haven't seen in these kinds of shows a lot. So it's really keeping me interested, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah. A quick break to say, our friend Helen, fellow Wisecrack host and podcast guest in the chat, said solid A from me, bros. So we got an A, which for me is a B++. But sorry to interrupt the train of thought. Billy, it looked like you were about to say something.
Well, I feel attacked that anyone's giving it a complete grade at this point. It's just tacitly saying that I am wrong. What I was actually going to say is I actually remembered what I was just going to pick up from Reilly from 2 comments ago, which was I totally agreed with her that a great moment was when Memory Rick makes the fake portal, which is just, flat green. To me, that was the best kernel of what this episode could do more in exploring. We have a world that is built on new rules. We get a good joke out of what those rules mean. And then we quickly realize, or the characters realize, oh, we can actually bend these rules in our favor. And I think, as far as I can remember, that's really the only way we use those types of discoveries. We did have Rick, coming up very quickly with, okay, here's how we're going to level back up and, get through other memories. But that was very much him saying, I know this is going to work. Okay, let's just follow my plan. And we as the audience just have to trust that rather than experience discovery along with them. And I think this episode, when they do rewrite it and resubmit it for a grade next semester, it's going to actually be a little bit of a Neo in the Matrix type thing of them figuring out, okay, how do I bend to the bullets and how does that actually help?
Yeah. Are you talking like that moment? It's like, they first shoot like the portal that doesn't work and then they shoots it again and the bullets bounce. Yeah, I love that. I was so like,
that was cool.
And it's almost like he sets up, like it was like the, risk versus cost or whatever, that it's like worth keeping around. Forget what that line was specifically, but totally, like I wish could have seen more like memory, physics, logic come into play, because those moments are that was such a fun moment to discover. It felt like very Who Framed Roger Rabbit, like the psych. That was super fun.
Yeah. My dream now, though, is that someone from that show, ideally Dan Harmon, is listening to this and is already rewriting the episode. And in 6 weeks, Billy's going to get like a FedEx package at his house. Yeah. And it's going to be the rewritten version with like a grading sheet for feedback. And the best part about it is, Billy would still probably be like, not enough. Give me another version.
I'm also going to tell you it's not going to be enough if he FedExes it. He needs to come into my office hours like really disheveled and not be forming words really well and say, my grandmother was sick and like my roommate was so weird. Just like I'm going to get a new roommate, but like I need to hear some good college fake excuses.
I'm going to get a new room.
I'll say this too. nothing to do with Rick and Morty. The worst types of college professors are the ones that get all uppity about that stuff. It's an adult. If the adult tells you someone died or they're going through some mental health stuff or whatever, why not just believe them? Like, what do you lose? Why am I going to spend time like looking through the death records in like a rural Pittsburgh area newspaper to know if your grandma really cased it? Like, if you say that, that's fine. For any, I know we have some teachers and educators that I know listen to this. Like, just who cares? Let's just be chill with people. So here's a question. So one of the reveals this episode gave us, which wasn't about the episode, but about the show as a whole, is we're now taking a month off of Rick and Morty. We're getting an hour-long season finale, which I think is the last 2 episodes, 9 and 10, on September 5th. What do we want or need from the rest of this season? And something we kind of like, it dipped in and out of this podcast, doing over the past 8 weeks is, what did we want to see at the beginning? What are we seeing? What would we like to see? And, some of the stuff we talked about early on was like we wanted episodes that explored the perspective of characters that were not, either Rick or the family. We wanted to see people in different configurations. I know something I've wanted to see is some level of connected stakes, or the stakes of things rising, so that by the end of the season, something happens that seems significant. But I'm curious for y'all's perspective, if we're thinking about like a season grade overall, what would these final 2 episodes, or I guess final 1 hour episode, need to do to get bumped up a grade or be at an acceptable level in your classroom?
I want Time God Jessica. That's like, I want that to come back. I don't know. That was like, especially because that was the first episode I'd ever seen of this show, and that felt badass. Like, I really would be so interested to see if and how that would tie in, and like the way that she kind of controls or like sees or bends or manages time, and like how that could maybe tie in with like all the clone families. I think like they were able to tie the clone families. I mean, even the last episode when they brought all the clone families back, if we're gonna get a wrap up with that, or if it's just like we're accepting that all the clone families know each other and get along and do things together. About the Jessica thing,
I'll talk more about this at the end of the podcast. So I got to speak with Jessica the other day. And by Jessica, I mean the voice actor that plays Jessica, Kari Walgren. And I tried to find out if we're going to get more Jessica, a separate Jessica story, some Time God stuff. I was told that because of contractual obligations and threats of violence, that there could be no confirming or denying. But I was very excited to let her know that those of us that do this podcast and listen to it love that episode and want more Jessica. So hopefully that happens. Was also very weird to be speaking to at times the voice of Jessica, who I also learned does many of the voices, including the voice of the Garage, I'm pretty sure, in this episode, and a few other things. So but we'll talk about them more later. Billy, how about you? What would you need to see for the show to pass your class?
This is a season that, more so than other ones, has felt fairly episodic, and especially the turkeys and the Gundam lately, we've been playing with a lot of different big tropes and genres. And not that this show is traditionally serialized in any way, but especially, we saw in season 3, we were really working through the separation of Beth and Jerry, and we eventually got to some form of reconciliation there. And I think I've got a question of, what are we building to here? And right now I feel like it is some sort of building to a head for Morty saying, I'm really out of this for a while. I am getting stepped all over. My needs aren't being taken into account, and creating some space between himself and Rick, or himself and the rest of the family. I don't know that it's definitely going that way, but like that's my best guess. But again, even that is sort of saying like, I'm still not sure what the real meat of this season as a package is. What I want more specifically in terms of any given plots is, I really hope we finally get back to an Evil Morty episode. It's been, 2 seasons, which is 5 years since the Citadel episode. And that is the ace this show constantly has in the hole of being able, of the threat of returning to that character and seeing what it wants to do. I really hope we finally get some payoff there, because I was hoping for it all season 4. And even though the whole idea of Beth being a clone, I thought was interesting. I thought we really, I'm trying to now think, this was at the end of season 3, Beth being a clone was the issue. And then we eventually met her as a clone in season 4. That to me is just interesting, but didn't pay off in a massively emotionally satisfying way.
Yeah, we had a great email last week from someone who was theorizing how they think Evil Morty's going to come back. So I know that's something people would like to see a lot. I like to see that too. But yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see some tie-ins with some stuff from the season. I would love to see Jessica come back into play in this final hour-long episode in some significant way with her time god powers to play a role in something that'd be fun. I don't expect it, but I'd love to see it happen. And I would like to see some significant relational fracture by the end of the season, whether that is Morty going his own way, whether it's Rick abandoning the family for a bit or something like that. I want something like that. And it was interesting to see over the weekend a bunch of the Rick and Morty writers just wanting to rub in all our faces. They get to write Rick and Morty episodes. We're posting about it. They just finished writing season 7. So this is season 5. They already got things going 2 seasons ahead. They know what's going to happen. So I am curious to see if them putting together so many seasons back to back to back is going to open up some trajectory of some loose through line that will go someplace. That's what I want. I know some people might want to just have a Simpsons version of the show where we reset every week. I don't want that. I want to find a way to build some stakes and have some connections, and I want some stuff to matter. So as long as something happens in the last episode that just matters, for those characters, that affects me as a viewer, whether I'm pissed or I'm happy or I'm shocked, that will lead me into, holy shit, how are they going to solve this problem in season 6? That's what I want. And I hope they can leave us with something like that.
That's really, I mean, like, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think, like, because this is my first foray into this world, like, starting off, I'm like, oh, it is Simpsons, it is episodic, it does reset every week. So that was like my expectation going in. And so then to get, I mean, there have been like some kind of like Easter eggs and references to other things throughout, but I feel like this was like a big episode this season of really like referencing a lot of, tying in other things throughout past seasons. That's I think that's why I also blew my mind of being like, oh, I'm missing so much. But it's made me curious of like, wow, the rest of the season did not feel at all like that. Like it really was like a reset button after every episode. And so to hear all this stuff about like past seasons and all of these arcs and like actual stakes that last for the characters throughout the story, that is really interesting to me. And like, I really hope something happens that matters, because the episodic stuff is super fun. But I mean, like, you and Michael, even on the last time I was here, you were saying that it's like, they're really good at like getting you in the feels and like really bringing up like wonderful story, like stakes and story. And so I'd be really, I hope some of that comes, because I'd be interested to see how they tie an episodic season together in that way, or don't, or if that's just not how they're going to end this season, and then give us like an idea of like, but here's how season 6 is gonna tie into that.
Well, as long as they don't bring the incest baby back, I won't be utterly disappointed.
Blow it up.
Yeah, kill the incest baby. Do it.
Yeah, I totally agree with this idea of I'm just hungry for something to really matter, and that was a big part of my wanting in this episode in particular. They, again, in that after the episode, writers talk about a thing, Dan Harmon says, okay, so we're diving into a fake mind world, but we have to have some stakes. So we threw in the idea of, you die in the mind, you die in real life type thing that all those movies do. The problem with that is, even if you can on paper motivate Rick that way, we as the audience don't for a second think, we know as an audience that even if Rick literally dies, he is still going to find a way to come back to life. He has programs in place for this. So the problem is that doesn't actually provide any dramatic motivation, and it doesn't latch us in as the viewer. What the larger question is, okay, what does Rick stand to lose here that he could actually lose? And that's going to be either some piece of his identity, or he's going to learn something very tough about himself, or, that he'll have to pay a major cost in terms of something else that matters to him. Or, we know that he ultimately loses out on Bird Person for the moment. Bird Person says, I'll see you when I see you. But again, because we didn't really clarify Rick's immediate need for that friendship, it doesn't feel like a massive loss. And when you don't have that cost to, that is attached to your fighting, then it really is impossible for it to pay off in a major way.
Yeah. And, for everyone who's listening, we want your opinions too. So I would love to hear, especially because I have a month to think about it now. How do you want to see this end? What is going to make this a good season for you? What would you like to see? What do you want to avoid? And you can let us know by giving us a phone call at 213-534-8807. That is 213-534-8807. Or squanch at wisecrack.co for email. There's no M on that. Squanch at wisecrack.co. And as always, we love it when you write. We read them all. We love them all. Don't always have time to read them on air because we got to talk about stuff. We need some time for us. But if y'all
self-care.
Yeah. Okay. Listen. But if y'all will be okay with it, you cool if we do a few emails and see what people are thinking about? Great.
I'll allow it.
Yeah. Thank you. Honestly, I didn't care. Billy gave approval. I needed Reilly, the number one Rick and Morty fan in the world. When they are on the podcast, you listen. So here's the first one. This is from Sam. The TLDR of this is, could Squanchy still be alive? And he says, during the Battle of Blood Ridge, Squanchy seems not to be wearing any space armor. Does this mean he could still be alive after Bird Person's wedding? If there's one character I'd love to see more of, it's Mr. Poopy Butthole, but after him, definitely Squanchy. Love the show. Squancha later. I don't know. I didn't really think about that one in the context of the show. Reilly, I'm not going to assume that you are familiar with the character Squanchy.
I did my research. I looked up Squanchy, and my God, I need more Squanchy personally. I mean, even just from the bits we saw in this episode, and then me like truly being like Squanchy, Rick, and Morty, enter. I need more of that character 10 minutes ago. My God.
Yeah, I was not particularly sold on Squanchy in the season 2 finale. I could take it or leave it, but seeing the cutaway to Squanchy's very cringe stand-up phase, that
yes.
I need lot more of.
Yeah. Any character that does bad stand-up. Yeah. I think the thing with the show is if they want him to be alive, they'll make him be alive. So if they have a good use for him, he'll come back. So, if you like him, just, find all the producers of the show and constantly tweet at them to bring Squanchy back.
That's really
and they'll
good.
Listen. That's what
really
they
good.
want to hear. As soon as they're done working on the rewrite of the episode for Billy, they'll get back to that. So here's one from Carlos. And Carlos is thinking about like how the show changes to keep it from becoming stagnant. I think this has a lot to do with what we've been talking about. So Carlos says, I just watched the last Squanch on Gotron Genesis Rick Vangelion, and I have a couple of thoughts on the statement that later seasons are growing on the premise that interdimensional space weirdness is a daily basis for the Smith family. Then he says, controversial opinion ahead, so get ready for a spicy take, friends. Carlos says, there's been some progress and development in the characters and their relationships. Rick and Morty, Rick and Summer, Beth's marriage, Morty and female characters, the family as a whole. That makes later episodes dynamic different from that of early seasons. I feel like this continuity is necessary to avoid the show to fall into a Simpson-like pattern, where there are more episodes than days in a year, characters never develop nor grow older, and time stops making sense at all, as well as the show itself. All of this without rushing the show, so we can get a fair amount of good quality Rick and Morty for years to come before it ends or becomes utter nonsense as a consequence of existing for way too long. As a longtime fan of the show, that's appreciated. So, yeah, I think that Carlos is getting at something interesting there. Like, how do you square that circle and have a show that stays interesting and, like, kind of like we're saying, keeps stakes and change and surprise without becoming The Simpsons? I don't know. We've kind of been talking about this, but if anyone has thoughts on Carlos's questions and thoughts, feel free.
I think the show's power that it can always return to in any moment, where it's sort of questioning its fundamental identity, is just to take an episode to talk about itself. and reset that way and figure out where the show has been trending. I think the most powerful time it's used that ability was in the season 4 premiere, when they are able to call out the very toxic aspects of the Rick and Morty community, people who do not understand how these episodes are supposed to be taken, and through the use of all of the Hitler Mortys, so to speak, they were able to say, we reject this is not what we're going for. Okay, how do we avoid this mentality in general? And so my issue with this season overall, as I was saying last round, was that it has felt deeply episodic. We're going to take on a big genre each time, but we're not necessarily going to figure out what that genre means to us or means to the characters. We're just going to do something with it. And I think this, whenever I hope that the episode that is already made that comes out, whether it's the season 6 premiere or even if it is just the next episode to come out, is able to sort of take a breather and assess where the series is at and then figure out where it wants to go from here.
Yeah.
It's weird. I mean, it's like with any show, it's like this is just thinking like big picture, not even immediate like story stuff, but like when do you decide to put an end to it? It's like, do you want to end on your own terms of like, okay, we have a really solid like story. And like, like you were saying, Billy, like the novel of Rick and Morty, here's a really like good ending. Or it's like, if you have this love for it, it's like, where do you draw the line of like, we're going to keep it going because we have a good thing going. We have all these ideas, but then like, what if that just kind of peters out or doesn't? Or it's like, to end on your own terms one day.
Yeah.
And make that just like the most kick-ass, long story that you can.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit last week on the show. And, like what you're saying now, Riley, reminds me of so many wonderful like UK comedy shows where they just give you like 6 to 8 episodes and they end. And your American brain is like, but what's next? And you're 100%. Like, oh no, they just took me on a really cool journey and left me with a question. Yeah. Definitely. Like recently I watched, I think it's called Starstruck. It's on HBO Max. I forget the name of the woman from New Zealand who made it. Is so funny, but it ends on this great moment and you're just like, cool. But we were talking last week about examples of shows, especially comedies that have stayed around for a long time, managed to work. The one that stood out to me was like Always Sunny, as a show that, you look back at, and I think they're going in 13 or 14 seasons. It's had ups and downs. You look back at some of the early episodes and you're like, wow, this is wildly problematic. But it's grown and changed and taken some fun swings and managed to stay pretty funny and adjust to the world around it. So, but I think that's an exception more than anything else. And I think with Rick and Morty, they signed on for like 70 something episodes. So we're in it for the long haul, and I think that will be the big question they're going to have to reckon with for a while. Does it want to be a South Park or Simpsons that's just like fun and consistent and becomes like a pretty good Adult Swim show? Do they swing for something bigger? I feel like it's up in the air, and I feel like they've like created both paths, and I feel like we see those parallel tracks, and it's always like, are they going to commit to one or the other? So
totally.
Well, we'll be curious to see if that happens. One last just quick email, because I think it relates to something we talked about earlier. And this is email we got before this episode. So it relates to things from this episode, but we got it before the episode aired. This is Patrick. Patrick said this, and this is about the last episode, or 2 episodes ago. I was thinking about Rick and his "say hello to my little me," which is like, a parody of Scarface's phrase, "say hello to my little friend." And I believe the joke here is in the word friend. Rick doesn't have any anymore. Bird Phoenix is now in shutdown in Rick's wardrobe in his garage. Or is he, Patrick? He has less confidence in Morty and their friendship. Summer is only trying to please him without being his friend. Besides, he now considers himself a god, and only he can get out of the mess thanks to him, and very literally in this case. A really funny moment in a sad situation. Let me know what you think about this. So, what do we think? Is Patrick reading some incredible meaning into a throwaway line? Or was the show hinting 2 weeks ago that we were about to get a further exploration of why Rick doesn't have friends? Wow, Patrick stumped us.
Yeah. I am fully on board with that reading. When I was catching up last night, that joke came up. I'm like, that's interesting. And I think that is absolutely the correct reading of it. And that there is sort of a thematic link here that they are starting to turn the gears on to warm up to last night's episode. And I think for me, this is really showcases, again, what I'm sort of lacking with this episode in terms of us more explicitly dealing with what Rick is lacking for friendship. In that, yes, we can put all of these dots together and they will make perfect sense. We can absolutely do that work and on a more, again, academic level and say, okay, yes, here is the flow chart of how we get, from sad Rick to Rick is lonely, blah, 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 blah. When you don't, however, when you force the audience to do it in that manner, as opposed to illustrate it through behavior that is more direct, again, we don't have to spell this out literally, and the worst thing we could possibly do is Rick, basically gives a monologue and says, I'm lonely because of this, and I want friends for this reason. But when you don't actively illustrate it through a tangential want, then all you can do is appreciate it on the intellectual level and sit back and say, yes, that's what happened there, as opposed to actually feeling it both, in heart and in laughter.
100%. I think that is like, I think that's exactly right. And that's why it's like, for me, it was just like, oh, it's a throwaway line because he's using a gun with his face on it. So it's like, because none of that was there, that didn't land on me because I was just like fully along for the ride. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a joke. And then it kept going. But I mean, it's like, I think that analysis is spot on. And I think you're right. I wish I would have seen like just show not tell more.
Yeah.
I think it would have hit. It would have been more satisfying. It would have hit more.
Yeah,
I think.
And I think I agree with both of y'all. And the ending of season 4, I did like because I felt like they showed us Rick's alienation and misery and loneliness. And yeah, I'll be curious to see if they find a new way to show us that, like you said, Billy, without him turning to camera and being like, "Let me tell you what it feels like to be me." So hopefully they avoid that. Any final thoughts on this episode or anything else before we get into some housekeeping and then wrapping up?
Just to continue my thought right now, this is if you want to achieve those types of really big payoffs, this is the place for proper use of synecdoche and metonym in your writing. This is where you need the whole reason that film scoring works and you feel so much when you hear the theme early on and one thing is happening in the movie and then they play it usually in a somber way in Act 2 is because, oh, I heard that before. Oh, it's making me think of that moment, but this moment is different. It's actually opposed and the character has the opposite of what they wanted back then. When you make those links, and that's part of, getting this whole idea, which, as Riley's point, so clearly it's about showing versus telling. That's the showing to be done rather than when you have your face on a gun and say hello to my little me, that's functioning more on the level of symbolism, which again is not going to hit you in a true emotional way.
Wow. And ladies and gentlemen, that's why if you had a chance to work on TV writing with Billy Domineau, that's why you do it. Because of things like that. I mean that genuinely. I sometimes sound sarcastic when I'm being genuine, but that's great. So before I wrap up, a couple things. One, we have the show has a hiatus, so we have a hiatus because we're a show about a show, and so they take a break, and then we take a break. So that's a thing. In the meantime, though, next week we're going to, or this week or next week, we're going to post the interview I did with Kari Walgren, who's the actor that plays Jessica and a bunch of other people. Going into it, I was like, I don't know, this will be fine, I guess. She's great, everyone, and really shed a lot of light on how they make the show, how she's been a part of the creative process. I tried to get her to share gossip from the VO community and how they feel about, screen actors who come in and steal all their jobs. And she got a little spicy. So that's always fun, although she wouldn't spoil for me anything coming up in the season. And we also learn about her heavy metal music. That's right, folks. She has a cool experimental kind of theatrical heavy metal cover project coming out that's rad. So listen to that and find out about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. So do that and listen to it, and then maybe other people that are on the show will come talk to us. I don't know. And now that we get going, we got to thank our wonderful guest, Billy. I've said this before. Sorry to put you on the spot. Are you teaching any workshops these days?
I'm not doing anything at the moment for teaching because is exhausting to teach online versus in person. It's also just more helpful, to create the writer atmosphere. But if anyone is interested, you don't have to be a member of the WGA West, but I'm running for a board seat on the
I just
Writers
want
Guild
you to
of
know,
America
I was
West.
about to set up for this. I just want to make clear that I wasn't going to
Okay.
leave here with that. Okay, so
I'm hearing I'm not being sarcastic. I was going to set up for this. Again, you're doing the telling, whereas
oh,
God,
accept life for what it is. Tell us more about this WGA election, Billy.
there's a election for board members for the Writers Guild of America, and I am running for a board seat, even though I've never held any position within the guild before. And it's cool, and it's very terrifying, and I'm hoping I don't burn every bridge in the process, because I'm running very much a you guys aren't doing the best job campaign. But if anyone wants to check out my platform and potentially endorse me, anyone can endorse me. And if you're in the guild, I can actually, include it in a bigger thing. But here, let me even find a thing. It's wgawelections.com /2021/Billy-Domineau. Just wgawelections.com.
That's awesome. That's so
Yeah.
exciting.
Everyone go look that up. If you're a WGA member, vote for him. And honestly, I don't care. Just to be clear, I don't care about being staffed and joining the union. That's who cares, right? But this is the first time I've wanted to, so I could vote for Billy. Never at any other time in living in Los Angeles have I ever thought to myself, someone staffed me. And now finally I get why someone would want to be in that position so they could vote for Billy. So definitely do that. Find him there. And then Billy, where can they find you online if they want to hear your errant thoughts about things, learn about gardening projects, anything else you got going on? Where do they find you on the Twitter?
Yeah, for pictures of gardening projects or just random tweets that include the words piss, shit, or cum, you can do @Billy-Domineau on Twitter or on Instagram @DuraflameLogs.
Hell yeah. So Riley, we definitely know where everyone who's listening to this now is going to go subscribe to Review over on the HeadGum Network, because everyone likes weird reviews. Everyone likes improvisation. Everyone likes Riley Anspaugh. So really nothing to lose there.
Oh my God.
And anything else that's going on you want to share about? And then where can people find you on social media?
Man, I mean, that really covers it. The show is REVIEW on the HeadGum Network. And on September 24th, tickets aren't available yet, but our show Into the Mist, which you can get more info at intothemist.net. We'll be posting updates there. We had to postpone our Chicago show because of Ye Olde Delta, which is a bummer, but just safer for everyone. So we're doing a one night only back to our online live immersive performance. So intothemist.net, and I am in it and I'm producing it, and it's a really good time. So everyone come check it out. I'm on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
You can see the handle at Riley Coyote, and on Instagram at Riley Anspaugh.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, Delta's bad. We don't support it, but it's great that because of that now, if people who don't live in Chicago want to experience the show, they have an opportunity to. And 100%. Then the lovely Chicago theater-going community will see it soon once everything gets better, because everything will get all better again. And so quick, I forgot to say this too. Shout out to Dem, who wrote us a really good long email, who at the end said he might have COVID and he feels like shit. I hope you're okay. COVID is bad. Take care of yourself. Fluids and rest, my bud. And that's the world we live in. And speaking of COVID, if you want to follow me on social media, @Michael O. Burns on various platforms, you can find me there and talk to me. So this is it. Thank you so much again to Riley and Billy. As always, we hope that you will come back and talk about the show some more. The Squanch will be back in a month. Ryan is not here to yell at the end, and I feel like I shouldn't try to fill in, because then it's just copying something special. So I will just say good night and good luck. It's an original thing that I'm going to start saying now. We'll be back next time. Thanks again, Riley, Billy. We'll see everyone soon.
Very good.
Perfect.